On live, you duck out.
I'm here. I'm eating some soup.
You're here and Ryan West is here. You got some soup?
Yep, just rode. I needed a snack before dinner.
Trails are finally open?
They haven't been closed.
Oh, really?
No, they're busy. Super busy today.
Nice.
Yeah.
I always joke with everybody because in New Jersey, like I'm always amazed. Like I'm more startled when I see a person on a trail than like a bear or a deer or whatever, like wild animals. And you would think that there wouldn't be a lot of wild animals in Jersey.
Right.
But like if I'm using the trails and I see like a dude walking around, I'm always like, what is this person doing in the woods? And in Colorado, that's just like status quo, you know?
Yeah.
So we went like a few weeks of like the state lockdown and they never shut down the trails. And then just like maybe 2 weeks ago or something, they finally did.
Oh, really?
But yeah, like Golden and all that has been shut down for a long time. But it's like now New Jersey's finally like Colorado on any normal day.
Yeah. Yeah. So the trail that I was riding at, Left Hand, you've ridden there before.
Yeah.
It's like, that place is so popular with mountain bikes and dirt bikes that when you see a hiker, like you should be worried for them because there's people on downhill bikes with full face helmets, and saw so many e-bikes today and chrome stanchion forks, which is never a good thing to see at those
chrome stanchion forks.
Yeah, like really low end forks.
Really? Oh, right. Gotcha.
Yeah, like budget mountain bike stuff. Yeah, you don't really you see those people at a trail like Left Hand, and it's like they're not having a good time.
Right. Well, we're starting to get some people piling in here. Ryan's commenting up a storm.
Oh, yeah. I forgot to click into the comments.
Sam says he sees Ryan literally everywhere. So I'm curious to see where he sees him from. And we got Pat from Santa Fe, New Mexico. So Adam, something I didn't realize, and my friend just pointed out to me, which I know has like literally no effect on you, but we double booked because the NFL draft is going on right now.
Oh.
So my question for you is, have you ever watched an NFL game?
Oh, yeah.
Who do you cheer for in Iowa? Like, what would be your team?
I never really was into professional football.
Iowa's like college football, right? Like they're all about college football.
Yeah, I mean, I went to Iowa State University, so I cheered for Cyclones. But I'll watch the Super Bowl because there's like buffalo chicken dip and stuff like that.
Well, rumor on the street is that the New York Giants have a number 4 pick and they're taking an offensive lineman from Iowa.
Oh, from there you go. Iowa University.
The black and yellow helmet.
Yeah, Hawkeyes.
Hey, Rich Drew is in the house. I know Adam, you know him too.
Yep. What's up, Rich?
Black and yellow helmet. And in typical Lenoski fashion, like Rich is like big time now, so he has a full-time editor. He's not sitting on his couch like at friggin' 2:00 in the morning editing YouTube videos like I am. But Rich, I just did my weekly YouTube video this afternoon, and when I get off with Adam, I'm going to try to edit it. And Adam, have you ever watched a Rich Drew YouTube video?
I only really watched the one from Sedona, so that probably doesn't like follow the same.
I mean, you know Rich, right? Like,
yeah,
so he literally tries to seduce the camera every week, like. And now his thing is like he says he's going to do something and it'll be like, are you ready? And I'm like, damn it, he got me every time. Like he's just seducing me right into the camera. And so today, Rich, in my how-to, I asked my viewers. No, actually, I did something and I said, Rich Drew, are you ready? So you might, if it doesn't get edited out, you might have a little name drop in my video this week. I know you're psyched about that. Rich, are you the guy who does the riding tutorials in Arkansas? Yes. He's definitely the guy from Arkansas. Have you spent much time riding there?
Me?
Yeah.
Never ridden there.
You've never ridden in Bentonville?
Nope.
Oh my God. It's pretty freaking awesome. Like my opinion of Bentonville and that whole area is, and I'll probably trigger some people, but like they don't have epic terrain. So they completely overcompensate by building the sickest, wildest stuff of all time.
Yeah, that's
like if you like park riding and jumps and turns and whatever, like it's friggin' awesome. But you're not going to climb to the top of 1,000-foot hill.
I heard it's like a lot of big machine built flow trail, but the thing is about that, you can always find new lines and have fun out there. So I definitely want to get out there at some point. But
yeah, it's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, we were trying to head out there for outer bike last year, but glad we didn't.
Did you ride with Steve tonight?
No, just Steph.
Okay. He said they picked up some Reeb ride on the way home from his left-hand ride.
Yeah, so Reeb ride they're serving it in crawlers at I think Tasty Weasel and Cyclops. So we're probably going to get over to Cyclops tomorrow and pick some up.
Oh, sick.
Yeah.
Cole Trickle wants to know how the tubes for his frame is looking. I was just talking to Tim about that one this morning.
Yeah, so haven't started on any sqweeb stuff this week. I've been knocking out a bunch of steel projects. We turned out like 5 or 4 hoopties, a dirt jumper, and that 24-inch kids bike. So getting a couple of those bikes wrapped up since they've been on the backlog for like over a month now. So want to get to those first, and then we'll get into some sqweeb projects soon.
Oh, nice. Awesome. Cool. Well, we'll let a few more people pile in here, and then I got some photos and stuff like that. We're going to talk about what it takes to build a bike tonight. And Adam's built quite the number of bikes. How many bikes would you guess that you built so far?
I probably should have started to keep count, but since I've been working at Reeb, I personally have welded probably 150 bikes, but I've had my hand in 350 or 400 now.
Oh, wow. Look at Rich Drew. Always looking for the sponsorship, hookup, whatever, but that'd be a good guy to have a long-term test. He did like the ridiculous a lot.
Yeah.
It was kind of annoying. He like hopped on it and just like killed, like I rolled up right as he was getting on it and he just like rode it perfect. Like he had been on it forever.
That's good. I mean,
sweet.
It's good to build a bike that is, comfortable right when you jump on it. That's important.
Yeah. Sam wants to know if I've been to Creek. I don't know if he's talking to me. I have been to I've hiked around Mountain Creek this year, but it's not open yet. There's a lot of trees down. So we're hoping to get the bike park to open this year. So that that would be a good thing if that actually happens. Let's hide that one. What the heck was I going to ask you? Oh, and then our buddy Mike that just bought the kids bike that I'll show some pictures of in a little bit. I sent them I sent them your videos that you were posting today of powder coating his kids bike.
Oh yeah.
And we got him on the rope because he was like, damn it, I should just order the second one right now. I was like, we got parts. It's ready to go.
Yep. Yeah, that thing, building. So we've done. This is the second 24-inch that we've done now with the current kind of geometry and build that I've been part of. And the second one was awesome to build. Just we went a little bit lighter on this one just because they're still really overbuilt. So we're getting into some tube sets that are a little bit lighter. So this one came out. It's a little over 3.5 pounds with everything on it, with all the cable guides and everything. But it's awesome because it's going to build up to be a super awesome bike. And all of the kid specific stuff that it's going to get built with is really cool too. The pro taper handlebars that are swaged down to like 1/2 inch diameter. So a normal handlebar is 7/8, and then you put a big grip on it, and kids can't wrap their hands all the way around it. So these Pro Taper bars are smaller diameter, and they have really tiny grips, so kids can actually grip the handlebar. So it's going to be a pretty awesome bike. I can't wait to see it fully built.
Yeah. So the funny thing about that was I was talking to my friend John, who's the product manager there, or actually like the head of product development over there. And he was saying that there isn't testing standards that exist for children. So they make everything light as possible inside for kids, but it has to pass testing for like you or I to ride it. So like those tiny handlebars, we could ride because there's no testing that exists for like, 100-pound or whatever.
Yeah.
It was kind of interesting.
Nice.
Let's see what we got here in this comment section. I'm going to go start up at the top and see if anybody's got any questions. We got Ryan West with a lot of hellos and whatever. Jose saying hi. If you guys have any questions relating to bike building, post them up. We also got some stuff on Instagram that we'll go through. We have some photos. We're going to spend just an hour tonight talking about what goes into building a bicycle. It's kind of something a lot of people don't get to see very often, and Adam does it every day. So he's the shell answer man when it comes to what it takes to fabricate a bicycle. This is a good one. Calvin Fisher. I'm going to put this one up on the board. Let's see. He was planning to do a custom trail bike build and was wondering if Reeb sqweeb would be worth the extra cost over other alloy frame sets. Well, Calvin, you're talking to two guys who spend a lot of time riding Reebs. Adam has ridden a lot of other brands before he started working for Reeb, and then he helped develop the sqweeb. I certainly spent a number of years riding other brands. The sqweeb's the best bike I've ever ridden. What do you have to say about that, Adam?
So yeah, we talked about this a little bit in the last live video, but I ride the Reeb sqweeb because it was so good. I've been riding a lot of other different bikes, and hopping on it, it's very confidence inspiring. It manuals really well. It jumps really well. One of my friends that he just got his sqweeb right before all the quarantine happened. He's probably actually one of the last ones that got a sqweeb before we paused for a bit. And he texted me the other day, and he said, "Damn it, Adam, why did you make such a terrifying and life-saving bike? All I want to do is jump as high as I can into rock gardens." Right,
and it just bails you out.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like, we build this bike to be, confidence inspiring and playful. That's the big thing. A lot of big bike manufacturers build bikes to be very dead and to really mute the trail. But if you like riding bikes, you don't want the trail to be muted. You want to find every little rock to hop off of and jib off of and transfer from rock to rock. So that's what we're doing, and that's why I think the sqweeb is awesome.
Nice. Hey, while we're on here, I'm going to ask a live question. Is anybody getting an echo from my computer at all? I didn't put in my headphones. I just realized that, and I wasn't sure if I was annoying people with an echo. So if there's an annoying echo, somebody comment. So one of the interesting things, I was on another live chat. I feel like with this quarantine, all I do is live chat. And I did this live chat the other day, and it was with it was a guy that we actually hooked up with a Reeb a year ago. He has a YouTube channel, Shut Up and Ride. He bought a Ridiculous. Yeah. Awesome guy, Matt. And he was asking about aluminum frames versus carbon frames. And we didn't really talk about it last week. And it's kind of pertinent to this question. So there's definitely a huge resurgence in aluminum in the mountain bike industry, but there's also a huge resurgence in aluminum as being a value option versus like a premium option. And with Reeb, we obviously make aluminum bikes because it's something that we can customize and do geometry changes and make custom bikes for customers. But we also believe that's an awesome material. And I was trying to explain on this podcast how with carbon bikes, if you're doing a huge amount of volume, you can get carbon bikes just as cheap overseas as aluminum bikes. The problem is when you try to go up to real volume, then you have to start making molds, and then you have to amortize those molds. So unless you're doing huge volumes, it's hard to make the next jump. You might reach your threshold with 500 frames out of a mold for a year or whatever, and they're pumping out those frames for this almost the same price as an aluminum bike. But when you want to make more aluminum bikes, you just hire more welders. There's not that overhead of a mold. But we're doing it from a totally different perspective. So if you're a consumer, you can buy a lot of super high-end aluminum bikes, but you could also buy super cheap aluminum bikes. So you really have to keep in mind it's not necessarily a matter of the material, because the material isn't necessarily what makes a frame expensive. It's the quality of the build. So you can buy cheap carbon frames, and you could buy cheap aluminum frames, and you could buy expensive carbon frames, you could buy expensive aluminum frames. Right. So a lot of times for the average consumer, they just see aluminum and they don't necessarily always equate. They think that a carbon frame is intrinsically more expensive, and that's not necessarily true. If you're doing a high volume, you could bring that cost down. There's a lot of marketing that drives up the cost of carbon frames. So when you're talking about a custom bicycle like Reeb is out of aluminum, you need to compare it to other high-end aluminum frames. So Calvin, that's the long answer to whether or not it's worth the extra cost over alloy frame sets. If you're looking to compare it to, a mass-produced, overseas sourced aluminum frame set, that bike is going to cost a lot less money. It doesn't have the same tolerances. It doesn't have the same time, craftsmanship as what we're selling, or if you were compared to another high-end titanium bike or aluminum bike or whatever. So you really want to just pay attention to the quality of the product that you're comparing it to. Cool. And look at that, Adam. We got it. We won them over already.
Nice. Yeah, there was a lot of comments kind of about what we were just talking about, the risk of carbon and warranties, and had carbon but went back to aluminum. The big thing is we really like to keep all the manufacturing in-house. So like that warranty problem is, keeping an eye on the product all the way through the process. And there is the risk of carbon of having a rock strike, or like we were talking about last week, like throwing a bike onto a tailgate and going up a rough shuttle road. Yeah, we want a bike that's resilient and that just can take a beating. We want to progress our riding and try new stuff and crash. Like that's the way of life. And with carbon bikes, you definitely have a higher chance of ruining your ride just because of, you go over the handlebars and your chainstay hits a rock and ends your day.
Yeah. You see any other good questions you want to put up on the screen?
There was one. So Ryan West asked, what is a heat treated frame? How do you do it, and what does it do? So I'll comment on both things. I'll comment on aluminum and steel. So steel tubes are heat treated to start with. What we use is an air hardened chromoly. So the tube is heat treated to start with, and after we cut and weld the frame, as the weld cools, it does not affect the heat treatment of the frame. So steel frames are not heat treated after welding, but all aluminum bikes have some sort of heat treatment afterwards. The material that we use is 7005 aluminum, and it is an age hardening aluminum. So it could either be aged for a month, which means after you weld the frame, 30 days after welding, the material will return to full hardness. Or you can artificially age it, which is a a ramped heating cycle in an oven for 10.5 hours. And that's what we do for our frames. So we can ensure that every frame that we finish goes out the door the same.
This is a good one from Jason McConnell. He owns a couple Reebs. So I know the answer to this question. Do you want to take this one, or should I answer it?
I'll start with it, and you can kind of give your take on it. So ISCG 05 tabs on frames. I've had a couple aluminum bikes with ISCG tabs welded to the bottom bracket, and I broke the tabs off of the bottom bracket shell, which wasn't a big deal because once they're broken off, you can just run an adapter. But the first Reeb frame, Chad Mellis was riding it, and we had some welded on tabs, and he did the same thing, broke them off. So we didn't want to build something into the frame that literally was meant to take a beating. Like, it's made to, get landed on and get crushed into rocks. So we use the ISCG 05 adapter plate to mount onto the bottom bracket, but we add a threaded boss in the frame so it can't spin. So the top bolt of the chain guide tab goes through the chain guide, through the adapter, and threaded into the frame so that adapter can't rotate at all. We don't really want to have any threaded features on the frame, or as few threaded features on the frame as possible. So if anything ever gets stripped out or a bolt gets cross-threaded, we want all of that stuff to be replaceable. So mainly it was, being able to replace it and not damaging the frame.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I remember when I got my first sqweeb, I asked that same exact question, and I don't even run a chain guide. I only run a bash guard. And there's some times when I hit that thing pretty freaking hard, and it's nice knowing that if it ever was to break, it's a piece that you could just replace super easy, and you're not going to damage, your thousands of dollar frame. Super easy to replace. Just keeps it, nice and simple.
Yep. And so we just started manufacturing our own. We had a couple issues with supply chain with the thickness of the adapter changing with the same manufacturer. So we started making our own. And if you would like a chain guide adapter with your frame, it's included.
All right, here's a good one. What's the real difference between a custom steel hardtail and a production hardtail if the steel used is the same?
So steel is a very broad term. Steel is an alloy, which a lot of people call aluminum bikes alloy, but all of our steel frames are alloy bikes because it's a 4130 chromoly. So it's a mixture of different materials to make the steel. So it's an alloy. That's the definition of alloy, is a mixture of different components. So steel being used is very different across the board. There's different heat treatments of steel. There's different triple butted tubes that have different butt lengths, different thicknesses on the ends. There's a very broad spectrum of steel tubes. So the difference with custom steel hardtails is we're able to take the body weight of the rider and what type of riding that they're doing and tune the tube set to deliver the best riding characteristics to suit that rider. So, if that rider is 120 pounds, they're going to get a really light tube set with most of the thick butts off to weld to the head tube and bottom bracket or the seat tube. It's custom bikes are way different than production bikes. Production bikes go through testing for a just general standard of how strong a mountain bike needs to be. But that is for, say a 250 pound person riding aggressive trail. If you're 140 pounds and only ride cross-country trail, we can build a bike that's 1.5 pounds lighter just based on the tubing that we select. So there's a huge difference between custom and production.
There you go. And we offer production air quotes when you go to our site, whether it's a sqweeb or any of the hardtails. We have preferred standard geometries, but pretty big majority of the bikes that we do have a lot of custom features. So even that alone, changing a water bottle location, a standover height, cable routing, like that's all the things that makes a custom bike a custom bike. When you buy a production bike, you're buying one that 1,000 other people are going to have. When you buy a Reeb, you could choose, it's not just the frame construction, but you could choose your head badge and your decals and your paint color, and literally the sky's the limit. So aside from building that ride quality that is going to suit the rider the best, it's also how it looks and features and stuff like that. It is a custom bike. So
exactly,
it's pretty sweet to have a one of a kind. All right, let's see, what else do we got here? We should just do like roulette, where you just like scroll up the comments and then tap your mouse and whatever one it lands on. John Davis has a good one, and this was just like, again, this isn't just because we make bikes out of steel and aluminum. This is a legitimate question, and it actually was something that Outside Magazine just covered within the past couple weeks. There's a ton of people that make really, really good carbon frames, and when it's good, it's good. But the problem is when you could have a small crash and your bike hits a rock, or a rock kicks up at your frame or whatever, and it's almost like the silent killer. Because once you compromise that carbon layer, it doesn't have any integrity anymore. Whereas an aluminum bike, God forbid you kick up a rock and dent your aluminum down tube really bad, it's probably just going to dent. But if you compromise the fibers of a carbon frame set, it's just a ticking time bomb. And it's not the kind of thing that like slowly cracks. When it cracks, it goes. Yeah.
I've had a lot of really big rock strikes on aluminum frames, and Chad Mellis, he did also on some of the original like early prototype sqweebs, and I'm talking dents, like an inch or close to an inch deep dent in the tube, and still find a ride. I mean, literally no problems afterwards. Like, it's definitely something that you would like to keep an eye on, but like slamming or like landing on a rock with all your body weight on the down tube on an aluminum bike, it just dents. It doesn't shatter. Like that's the big difference for sure.
Pat Brown coming through with hold on, NFL alert. Joe Burrow is going to the Bengals. I know that you have no idea what that means, Adam, but the #1 draft pick from LSU, Joe Burrow, quarterback, is going to the Bengals, and that really sucks for him. So now it's just a matter to see if the Washington Redskins pick Chase Young, because Giants have a #4 draft pick because they really suck this year, and we're hoping that nobody picks him because he's really good. So we'll just keep an eye on this, and let's see what this next question. This was a good one. So we have our own proprietary tube set. How would it ride compared to Columbus Max or Reynolds 531?
So to be honest, I've never built with either. I've only built with True Temper OX Platinum and S3 tubing, or Variwall. So yeah, we haven't built mountain bikes with those, so can't really tell you much.
Gotcha. Let's see what this is.
So Cole Trickle has a good one. Why are rear brakes normally IS mount and not post mount like forks are? So there's plenty of bikes that are going to post mount rear. So the thing with forks is that fork lowers are cast, and it is much easier for a fork to be cast into a post mount configuration with good alignment of that face, the post mount face to the dropout, or like to the dropout. It's not really a dropout because it's through axle, but the hubs.
Axle. Yep.
So with the way that we machine the sqweeb dropouts, to do post mount, it would have to be a third and fourth operation, and getting that alignment is, since it's in a third and fourth operation, we can't be certain that it's perfect. With IS mount, it's machined the flat surface of the IS mount is machined the same time that the hub seat is machined, so we can ensure that it's perfectly straight and in the same plane as the disc is going to be. Post mount adapters, you still use adapters with brakes, and IS adapters are not really any different. So it's something that we've been toying with, but in the long run, IS mount has always worked just fine for us, and I run 200 rotors in the rear, and I've never had a braking issue or a mount issue. Alignment has always been perfect. It's just something that we don't need to throw a bunch of time and money at when something already works well, that we don't need to follow the bike industry's push to change just so that, big company can sell product. If it works, it works. We don't need to do something completely different so your stuff doesn't fit just because the industry is pushing that.
All right, so this is a good one. This is the follow-up because apparently he's ridden it. So Columbus Max is painfully stiff. 531 is stiff, but has a fairly supple ride. I would say that from my impressions riding you've ridden more steel bikes than I have.
Yeah.
But I was pleasantly surprised when I got on my Reeb over a year ago, how supple that it was for a hardtail. And I never had the opportunity to ride a good steel hardtail for a really long time. But I grew up riding hardtails and then basically made a career out of riding hardtail dirt jumpers, but never had the opportunity to have a steel hardtail trail bike. And then I finally got one, and it was I was pleasantly surprised at the suppleness and the feel of it, and it wasn't harsh. It had all good attributes. So I would say that it would probably be somewhere closer to 531 than Columbus Max. It's definitely not painfully stiff by any measure.
So I'll make a little bit of a comparison in what I know with True Temper OX Platinum, which is the air hardened, heat treated alloy, like 4130 chromoly alloy that we used before True Temper went out of business. So we actually, when we started making 44 millimeter down tubes, so 1 3/4 inch down tubes, that was required to start running 140 millimeter forks with slacker head angles. So we went up to the larger outer diameter, and we were one of the first mountain bike companies to ever use something that large. And the part number that a lot of big frame builders used was the part number for the down tube was Reeb down tube 1, because we came up with the design. So honestly, that OX Platinum down tube was so stiff, that air hardened alloy was such a strong, stiff alloy that it was very overbuilt. And the Verywall tubing that we're using now, it's the same OD, and it's the nearly the same butt locations, but it's a little bit of a softer alloy, and it is more supple than OX Platinum. I never thought I would actually say that, because I was a big supporter of True Temper stuff, but Verywall is doing some really good things, and they're still making all the tubing here in the USA. So I would say from the original Diculous 2 to the new Ridiculous, the new Ridiculous is definitely a softer ride than the Diculous 2 because of moving to Verywall tubing.
All right, this is a good one. How does the Ridiculous ride differ from the Ridiculous 2? And is the titanium for the Ridiculous 2 sourced from the US? Thanks, guys. So I'll answer the first part, and then you answer the second part.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yep.
All right. So Adam, you've always had a custom Reeb hardtail, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So when I started a little over a year ago, I just got with Reeb when I started. The first question, Chris, when I first started riding for Reeb, and he was building my original sqweeb, was what kind of measurements do I want? And when I got my first sqweeb, I just wanted it box stock because I wanted to be able to talk to customers and talk about how the bike felt in general, not how my particular bike felt, because I didn't really feel like it did anybody any good if I had a completely custom bike and then you weren't buying the same thing. So I got a completely stock sqweeb as my first bike, and then I got a completely stock Ridiculous 2 as my second bike. And I got that bike and I liked it a lot, but I wanted to do some pretty aggressive riding on it because I had never had the opportunity to have a good, strong, high quality steel hardtail before. And I was looking to ride that thing pretty hard. So I got my Ridiculous 2. I liked it. There was a lot of things I did like about it, but when I wanted to do more aggressive riding, it felt a little tall, felt a little steep, felt a little tall in the head tube, felt a little tall in the seat tube, and it felt a little steep. So I pitched to the guys that we tried making one that had a pretty extreme standover height and a much slacker head tube, because I started to see that, like, when you're riding down steep stuff on a hardtail and you get on the brakes, it all goes into the head tube. So what would have commonly been considered like way too slack for a hardtail, a 65-degree head angle, which is what we have on the Ridiculous. Once you start rolling down something steep, it's not like a suspension bike where the whole thing squats together and your head tube stays fairly consistent. Your head tube instantly steepens. And then we also have a fairly short rear end, so it still was going to be nimble, but it just gives you that confidence when you're riding down stuff. So to answer your question, the difference between a Ridiculous and a Ridiculous is you have significantly more standover height. You have a slacker head angle, so when you're doing steep roll downs and you're landing big jumps and you're getting all your suspension travel, you're not going from a 67-degree head angle to like almost a 70. You're going from a 65 to around a 67. So it still has a stable ride. The rear end is really short, so it still is nimble. And living on the East Coast where the trails are super tight and twisty, even with that slack head angle, it still handles awesome. It's still nimble. It doesn't feel like you're trying to steer a bus through super tight trails. So it just really depends on what you want to use the bike for. If you're into just traditional straight up trail riding, backpacking, stuff like that, the Ridiculous 2 is still an awesome option. But it is going to be a more traditional geometry, whereas the Ridiculous is almost like a hardtail sqweeb, so to speak. So if you're looking to send it and get really rowdy, the Ridiculous is going to be what you're looking for. If you're looking for more bike packing, trail riding, cross country, you're going to gravitate more towards the Ridiculous 2.
Yeah. So the big thing between the Ridiculous 2 and the Ridiculous is we sell a lot of hardtail bikes to people that don't have big mountains to ride. And the Ridiculous 2 is great for about 90% of the US. And we wanted to have a hardtail that was a little bit slacker and longer and lower with more standover for, Rocky Mountain riding and more like trials based stuff and dirt jump stuff. And like I built for kind of a comparison, I built a 29-inch dirt jumper for myself, a full one-off custom frame. And we were doing a photo shoot with the new Ridiculous, and I took out our long Ridiculous, which is like a large or extra large frame. And it was right there like my dirt jumper. It was fun to take off big slope style jumps and have fun with it. So, yeah, the Ridiculous is definitely for that, more gravity oriented, or like, trail, like maybe you want to hit the skate park on the way home, like, do whatever kind of bike.
How awesome is that comment?
Ridiculous.
Ridiculous. All right, so this is a good question from John. And
hold on, we gotta end off the second question.
Oh, the sourcing for the titanium.
Yeah, so we source titanium from Haynes, which is made in the USA, and then we also use Data Chai for any butted tubing. So the new lick skillet and Sam's pants, we are doing in Data Chai, which is an Italian-made titanium tube. There's nobody in the U.S. that makes butted tie tubing, so we have to go overseas for that. But it's really high-quality stuff. And for our mountain bikes, we use a straight wall titanium tubing that is way oversized. So this isn't your typical titanium mountain bike that we're building. This is a titanium mountain bike that can withstand any type of riding, but is still a little over a pound lighter than our steel bike. So it's really good quality stuff. And we still do all the machining of the titanium right in-house.
Nice. So John wants to know if we customize for women. You built Steph a completely, well, not completely custom. I mean, it was kind of the blueprint for the extra small or small squeeb, right?
Yeah. So yeah, to kind of get into that. So the big thing with doing custom bikes for women is women come in all different sizes. And we previously did not sell a lot of small bikes. So every bike company sells a lot of mediums, larges, and extra larges. So our small bikes, we wanted to really make sure that it fit the full spectrum. So we took what we had and kind of asked ourselves, like, why aren't these selling, or like why isn't our small great, or like why don't people want to buy them? So Steph, my girlfriend, is 5'2", so she's short. And she hopped on one of our small hardtails, and the standover wasn't low enough. And she hopped on the V2 sqweeb, and again, the standover wasn't low enough. And one thing that with the sqweeb that was really difficult is with a 150 millimeter fork and a 5'2" person on a 29er, you're really on the low end of being able to fit on that bike. But so I took Steph as an example of what we needed to do with that small framed bike. And we made the new Ridiculous and the new sqweeb V3 fit somebody that's as short as 5'1" or 5'2". So that's what we kind of did to customize for women. But also if a lady was ordering a custom frame, we would take her weight into account and do a custom tube set that was lighter weight for her. We don't do smaller grips and brake levers and handlebars and seats and stuff like that, because I think women need the same amount of control as men do. If it's something that's specific that you don't like wide bars, that's something that we can always do with the overall build of the complete build of the bike. But the custom for women thing, I think, kind of went overboard to where that I think a lot of ladies that actually rode hard didn't actually really want the specific, women built stuff. So, yeah.
What's Steph's bike built up as? Is it a 150 rear or 130?
130 rear.
Okay, and then a 150 front?
Yep.
And did you just do that to have a shorter travel bike, or was standover a consideration because of the slightly shorter fork?
No, she can still run a 160 fork. It doesn't, going from 150 to 160 doesn't change standover much, I would say.
Yeah, just 10 millimeters in the front, right?
Yeah, and that's pivoting off of
right.
Over the rear axle. So it's like probably a 1/4 inch or so overall. No, but she was coming off of a 130 millimeter travel bike. and I think her riding suits a 130 travel bike. So, yeah.
So I know that Steve already knows the answer to this question, and considering that Steve just voted, Oscar Blues just put up the question, TBIPA or Reeb ride, and Steve commented Reeb ride. I don't even want to answer this question, so I'll let you answer it.
You sure can. So all of our bikes have full custom options. So one thing that when Jeff designed the Ridiculous, he went to a fixed rear dropout instead of a sliding dropout. This does a couple different things. If you're running gears, you don't necessarily want a sliding dropout unless you're going to be changing your wheelbase. And the sliding dropouts, you can change up to 20 millimeters of wheelbase. So that is a cool feature. But if you know you're never going to change it, it just creates a lot more interface with the rear hub and disc brake. So it's a lot more of a solid, just set it and forget it rear end to just have a fixed normal dropout. So the Ridiculous is still available with sliding dropouts, and we had custom chainstays made just for those sliding dropouts that are custom swaged from 3/4 inch chromoly all the way down to 1/2 inch. So creates a lot of clearance. It makes it a really supple rear end for single speeds and looks awesome too.
Yeah, somebody else commented earlier about whether or not you could adjust the compliance of the rear end of a hardtail.
Oh, 100%.
And I 100% feel like there's no scientific study for this, but I just feel that with the Ridiculous, or with, first of all, with the Ridiculous 2, the top tube was a 21-inch tall top tube, or, you know, size appropriately, and on the Ridiculous, it's just under 18.
Yep.
So it's a much smaller triangle, and I definitely believe that there is some upward compliance because of the smaller angle of the tubes.
Exactly. So seat stays, the different sizes of seat stays is huge. Like our normal build is a 19 millimeter seat stay that tapers down to, I believe, 14 millimeters down at the dropout end. So it tapers down to allow that seat stay to flex. So we could also do a smaller taper. So it would start at like a 16 millimeter at the seat tube and taper down to 12 millimeter at the dropout. So there's a lot of different things in seat stays that can add a little bit of, kind of vertical compliance. But the lower standover too, if you're doing a lot of like seated riding over rocks, and like on a single speed, you're either standing or sitting. So having more seat post out of the frame, you're going to get a lot of compliance in that seat post also. So there's a lot of different things we can do to do that, rear end compliance with, however much you weigh, and custom build options.
So Andrew's an East Coast guy. He was commenting last week. He was a NICA racer, asking about the sqweeb. Now he wants to know how the Ridiculous handles the rough spot after the cabin. So I don't know if you, right after I got that Ridiculous last year, I posted a video, Adam, of there's like at Mountain Creek, there's this one drop that it was literally like a cabin that they built.
Okay.
And they used it for this Red Bull project, and they turned it into a drop for when they did the Pro GRT there years ago.
Okay.
You may have seen a video on my YouTube channel or on my Instagram of looks like you're tucking off a house. It's actually a feature at Mountain Creek Bike Park, but
okay.
It's the biggest gap in the park. It's probably 15 feet out, 15 feet down, or 17 feet out, 17 feet down, but it's like by far the smoothest drop. Like it's so perfect. But then right afterwards, there's a little rough spot, and it soaks it up like a dream. So yeah, taking that bike to Mountain Creek is super fun. You get everybody giving you weird looks that you're riding a hardtail at the bike park, but I rode every single thing at Mountain Creek on the Ridiculous and the Ridiculous, and on the Ridiculous it's even easier. This is an awesome question. So what if you're 6'4" with really short legs? First of all, we readjusted the geometry on the sqweeb version 3 and the Ridiculous to have significantly more standover than the previous versions.
Significantly.
Yeah, so you might even be perfect just with a stock frame. But again, that's where working with a company that makes custom bikes comes into play, because even if our significantly lower standover wasn't low enough, the reach, if you're 6'4", I'm 6'4", Adam's right there.
Yep.
The reach is going to be right where you want it. If you needed more standover, that's even possible. But
yeah, I think on the long ridiculous, I can run a 210 dropper with like almost 4 inches of seat post sticking out. So they're like 3 or 4 inches. So there's tons of room. If you have shorter legs and just you could still probably run a 210 even if you had extremely short legs and you were a 6'4". So yeah, there's a Shut Up and Ride. Looks like he did a $20 donation and asked, where do you get your steel from? China? So no, all of our steel comes from Verywall, which is in Columbus, Ohio. They're one of the only steel bicycle tubing manufacturers in the U.S. So before it was True Temper, which they make golf clubs and other sort of variable wall thickness steel tubing. But when True Temper announced that they were getting out of the bicycle market, Verywall stepped up and pretty much took it completely over. So I've been super impressed with their stuff. It is way cleaner than anything that True Temper did. So yeah, it's been awesome. And yeah, all the steel tubing is from the USA and machined, and everything's manufactured here. Everything that we buy from Paragon, like all the small parts, like the tubes and the dropouts, it's all made in USA and machined in California.
All right, let's see if we got anything else on here that we need to address, and then we can go to some Instagram questions, and we got some photos because we did say. Oh, I didn't realize that Matt posted that. So not only is Matt a good dude, and he did a super chat, but he's got an awesome YouTube channel called Shut Up and Ride, and we supported him through Reeb last year. And I just did the live chat that I was talking to Adam about was on his Shut Up and Ride YouTube channel. So you should definitely go check out that time chatting. It was super fun to talk to him about all that kind of stuff. All right, so this one right here from Curtis. Seems with the Reeb bikes, there's way more modifying room with the stock bikes to go in any direction you want with a build. That's pretty cool because it's like getting multiple bikes. So not totally sure if I get that question, but on our website, we offer suggested builds. But as a custom bicycle company, you can order a bike configured any way you want it. So when you go, there's obviously different packages: Shimano XTR, XT, SLX, SRAM, Eagle, NX, whatever. We offer suggested parts builds, but I'd say 85% of the people that buy complete bikes from us completely customize in some fashion or another. Nobody's just saying, give me that completely stock build. They're changing a saddle, they're changing a wheel set, they're changing a handlebar, and then choosing paint, choosing all that other stuff so that they get a complete custom bike.
So yeah, we have all of our stock builds as like a suggested guideline of like, kind of where you should go with the build. But we have a full service bike shop and we do everything we build all the bikes one at a time out of our shop. So, we're really in tune with the customer. And if you want to change, handlebar selection or grips, or, if you want to run Shimano drivetrain with SRAM brakes, that's a pretty popular thing, or vice versa. There's tons of customizing that you can do. And we don't ever just set it to where you have to buy the stock bike and then deal with selling off all of those stock components and upgrade them yourself. Like, you can call us up and get whatever you want.
Awesome. We have another question from Devin asking when the Reeb Trail Boss will be available for purchase. And that is, I guess, basically that is the ridiculous. So it is available, Devin.
Yeah.
We're going to share some pictures because we're 55 minutes in and we wanted to talk about some bike building. So, all right, this is going to be like the, can you see that right now?
Yep.
Yep. All right, so this is going to be like speed dating, something like that. I show a picture, you tell me what you think or what's happening. When you're done writing.
What was that? Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh.
I said this is like speed dating. I show a picture, you talk about what's happening.
Gotcha. So this is cutting the down tube bottom bracket miter. So the pretty much the hole saw is cutting the junction where the bottom bracket is going to get welded into the down tube.
Okay. I think I have these in chronological order as far as manufacturing process. So what's happening right here?
So that is the finished cut of the last photo.
Gotcha. And so now this is the down tube
bottom bracket junction.
Bottom bracket junction. Right.
Yep.
Now it seems like a low tooth count on that saw. How do you get that from not snagging the metal?
So we run them at like 250 to 300 RPM. And it's just a nice slow feed, very controlled speed. And they do snag every once in a while, like probably 1 out of 50 tubes or so. It'll snag and will ruin a tube. So if you see there's a little bit of heat generated on the very edge of that tube, mainly that's from it's an 1.5 inch diameter tube, and we're cutting with an 1.5 inch hole saw. So it's pretty much taking that thickness of the tubing down to nothing. But that hole saw is probably getting a little dull also, so we'll probably swap that out soon.
All right, so now we're clearly going to a different saw blade.
Yep. So that's the 1 5/16 hole saw. So that is the top tube to seat tube junction. So Jeff, if you want to take off that comment that's covering up some of the screen.
Oh, gotcha. Let's see. Okay.
There you go. So yeah, that's the top tube to seat tube junction. So essentially the hole saw is where the seat tube will go.
Yep. Okay. And then these are all from the past couple days, huh? This is what you're working on, like literally.
Yeah, that was all from yesterday. This is the custom, or not really custom. We're doing it as a production bike now. It's the 24-inch. I think we're going to call it the Trail Boss Junior. We haven't really come up with a name for it, like a real name.
Yeah, that's pretty dope. And Mike Gracie, my buddy who ordered this last one, said he was going to be on the live chat tonight, and I sent him the pictures of what you were building. He was super pumped. So hopefully he's seeing this right here. All right, so now we're going to a different shot.
Yep. So that is top tube to head tube junction. So it is a 48 millimeter hole saw, and that is cutting the top tube to head tube junction.
All right. Now you remembered I told you when I was in college. Actually, I don't know if I ever told you this story.
That you deburred toilet seats? I
deburred toilet seats, but did I ever tell you that I used to manufacture, because back in the day, all right, so we'll go super far back. My first trials bike ever was an Ibis. Ibis made,
nice.
they made these, well, they had an American-made Ibis steel trials bike.
Yep.
And then they did a whole batch of made overseas trials bikes. This was my senior year of high school. I bought a steel Ibis trials bike, and it had just a regular unicrown fork, rigid fork.
Yep.
But they were sourced overseas. So every single person I ever knew that ever owned one of those Ibis bikes, the forks all bent and broke because the trials, like that's a super abusive part of those bikes. And back then, over 20 years ago, everybody was running dual crown, triple clamp, whatever you want to call it, trials fork. So it looked like a downhill fork from nowadays, but it just straight steel legs back then. So Monty was a super popular brand. Everybody did like triple clamp forks, and I guess it kind of was because like when bicycle trials first started, it was for kids. Like Hans Ray was the first guy that ever rode mountain bike trials and like made it an adult thing. Trials prior to that was basically like if you were a kid and you couldn't ride a motorcycle, you rode bicycle trials. So bicycle trials started out on 20-inch bikes, and the bikes, in order to be strong enough and also like look like motos, they all had triple clamp, dual crown, whatever forks.
Yep.
I got that Ibis. It was a mullet bike. It was a 24 front wheel, 20-inch back wheel, and immediately destroyed the fork. So there was a company in Kansas that was making aluminum trials forks for these bikes, like replacement parts. It was called Grapevine, and they had these beautiful aluminum forks that you could just retrofit to an Ibis, but they weren't heat treating them. So I remember like I just graduated high school. I was working, talk about like going into a wormhole right here. But I just graduated high school. I was working, and I bought this like $900 aluminum fork to put on my, like the entire bike only cost $900 from Ibis.
Wow.
I got it, and immediately, like I'm not even exaggerating, the first day the thing broke. Because it wasn't heat treated. So I sent it back. They globbed on more weld. It looked like toothpaste on there or whatever, sent it back, and I broke it again. So then I was working in a machine shop because that was my summer job. My dad worked in the plastics industry my whole life, and he just like got me a job in the machine shop, and I used to just do like little machining jobs, nothing super crazy or anything. So I decided to start tinkering around on the Bridgeport, and I made a hand cut dual crown, triple clamp mount. And I had one of the guys that worked there, was a good welder. He made chromoly legs. So I basically made like chromoly legs, upper and lower clamp, ordered a replacement steer tube for like a Manitou fork back in the day. And I made a fork to fit that Ibis.
That's awesome.
And a whole bunch of trials guys liked it. And I probably sold about 24 forks for trials bikes, like between like freshman year of college and sophomore year of college, as clean technical gear. And it was an aluminum upper and lower plate with pinch bolts, and then chromoly legs. So I know that blue stuff on the tube right there is when you're machining stuff, you put that dye on there so you could actually see what you're doing. Because when you're machining stuff, so for people that are watching this and like they don't really understand what's going on there, you put that blue dye on there, and then you can mark where you need to cut, and you can see it. Because when you're trying to machine stuff, if you just like scribe the line on a silver tube, you can't see it. It's hard, it's hard to tell what you're machining. So you put that dye on there, and then it allows you to be super precise. So that's what that was my super roundabout way of telling you and people what that purple dye on there is, huh?
If you go forward a couple images, I think there's a good example of, yeah. So that one's the cut. But if you look at that one really close, you can see a scribe line right where the beginning.
This one. That one.
Yeah. So you can see a scribe line right where the beginning of that cut actually starts.
Oh, right here.
So nope. So that's actually.
Oh, right, because it's here. Actually,
yeah, that's been deburred. So there's some extra, but yeah, there's that scribe line, and that cut is, I mean, that's within, a couple thousandths of being right on. So yeah, it really helps with you being able to line up that mark. And that's the top tube to down tube overlap. So that's where the top tube actually caps the down tube where it's welded to the head tube.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep. So now what do we got here?
So that is, so we saw that cut earlier. That's the bottom bracket miter, but this photo shows the seat tube interference miter. So the seat tube is welded to the bottom bracket first, all the way around, and then the down tube mates into the bottom bracket and seat tube together. So what the hole saw is cutting right now, that would be where the seat tube would come in.
Gotcha. All right. Now what do we got right here?
That's drilling water bottle bosses. So we've got a jig to drill the perfect water bottle dimension on center line of the tube. So we can adjust that to wherever the water bottle needs to land in the frame, which with this frame is tough because it is tiny. A normal sized water bottle takes up the entire triangle. Like that's how small this bike is. It's got like a 12-inch or
yeah. And now with a water bottle boss, that's a mount that's actually tack welded into the frame, or is it like a pop rivet kind of deal, or what?
Nope, it is it's a boss that is fully welded into the frame.
Gotcha. All right, now what we got here? This is the whole front end's jigged up.
Yep.
You clamp in the first thing is you clamp in the seat tube and the head tube, right? And then it's connecting the 2 points.
So the first thing we do is bolt the bottom bracket in and weld the seat tube to the bottom bracket shell. And then after that is welded, it's aligned. So it's perfectly perpendicular to the bottom bracket. And then it goes back into the frame fixture. The head tube is added, and then the down tube is welded to the top tube. So you can see that the top tube overlaps the down tube. So underneath the top tube, the down tube is fully welded to the head tube.
Gotcha.
And then because that weld gets completely covered up.
So the bottom bracket is the brain of the bike, huh? Not the head tube. The bottom bracket is what everything has to reference off of.
Exactly. So the bottom bracket is the main reference point. The head tube, I would say, is the second biggest reference point because that's going to give, the straightness of the bike, but also where that rear axle is. And you can see kind of in the very far left of that photo, you can see where the rear axle actually lands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Now what do we got here?
So that is mitering the seat stays. So on this bike, the seat stays are really difficult because the standover is so low that the tire actually is so close to the seat tube that there's not really even much room for a bridge to go in there. So it's really tight. There's room for a 2.4 tire, 24-inch by 2.4. So that's cutting the... Yeah, there you go. There's a good shot of it.
And now on all of our bikes, when you're first fabbing up a bike, like this is a completely custom 24-inch bike, you're actually taking the tire that the consumer wants to use, putting it in there and double, triple checking that tire is actually going to fit in that bike.
Oh, yeah, because
measurements, but physically putting it in there and checking.
Tire sizes are all the way across the board. So we like to just stick the wheel in there, and we've got our own test wheels for every wheel size and every known tire, configuration. So if somebody wants to run, this came up recently, like a 650B by 50 tire in a 700C frame. We have that set up so we can make sure that it actually fits in real life. We're not just going off of measurements because tire widths are wrong by up to a 1/4 inch sometimes. And the overall diameter of the tire doesn't, like, you can't just take a round object and say, oh, this is 2.5 inches wide, and the tangent point of a 2.5 inch circle is going to be where the widest part of the tire is. That's not true at all. The tire knobs are always higher than the tangent point of a circle. So we just like to, try it in real life and make sure things actually fit, especially with these, these bikes that we've only built 1 or 2 of. We definitely want to make sure that it's going to fit well.
All right. So what are we looking at right here? Can you see my mouse?
Yep.
And what do we got up here?
So that is a purge setup and heat sink for the head tube. So it is a bronze heat sink. So it is an expanding bronze insert that goes inside of the head tube, and it's tightened up. So when we're welding the tubes to the head tube, it doesn't ovalize the head tube, because that would cause, bad bearing fitment and everything. And then the purging setup is for welding titanium bikes. So titanium bikes have to be fully purged with argon inside and out, so the weld is as clean on the inside as the outside. So steel bikes don't need that. It's not nearly as critical as stainless or titanium is.
Why is that?
Because titanium reacts to oxygen in a more volatile nature. So if oxygen is introduced into a titanium weld, it will cause it to be brittle.
So you just get oxidation, or just a brittle weld, or
both? Yeah, it'll be really the weld won't be very clean. It'll look dirty. And it creates a brittle area around the edge of the weld.
All right, and there is the finished product, huh?
Yeah. So that was all yesterday.
Nice. And then today we were powder coating it. If you look at our Reeb Instagram page, you can see that same bike getting powder coated. It ended up being a nice, cool black, right?
Yeah. Mike, the customer, wanted something that was pretty stealth, so we did gloss black powder coat with gunmetal chrome decals. So it turned out really good.
Nice. So this is a random question. So obviously on these tubes right here, you got to polish the ends so that you prepare them for welding and everything. But how come these tubes come through with, just a darker finish, whatever, and then these are, they all look like they've been kind of polished or hit with a Scotch-Brite pad. Is this just the way they come versus the way these ship, or whatever?
Yeah. So the top tube and down tube are butted heat treated tubes, and the seat stays and chain stays are just round 4130 chromoly. So this bike, it being a 24-inch, it's really difficult to find tapered and butted stays that will work for something that's so short, especially with the seat stay bends. You can't find any off-the-shelf bends that would work in that sort of nature, like a tapered tubing. So we use round tubing for that, because these kids' bikes, we use a really thin wall tubing, because any of the tubing that we would buy would be heavier and way overkill for a under 100-pound kid. So these will make it ride really smooth and give it a more supple nature than something that's built for somebody that weighs twice as much.
Gotcha. So this is a blast from the past, and this is, do you know what this is right here?
That's your first Ridiculous, right?
Yep, exactly. I was just going to point that out. So this was a prototype version of the first Ridiculous. When I talked to Chris, I had said, just want to make the chainstays as short as possible. And if you can see my mouse scrolling on there, it was like literally, it was touching the C-tube. It was super close. So this was the first prototype. We actually ended up going back and kind of dialing back that a tiny bit, because
I think that
it was a little unnecessary. Like it felt good, but I didn't want to like have people buy that frame and then be bummed because they couldn't fit a specific tire. So I think we moved it back like 2 or 3 millimeters or something pretty insignificant, but at least give you some tire clearance so that the the little knobs of your tire weren't rubbing the seat tube on every single thing, or if you picked up a rock or something.
Yeah, that was, I think, 405 millimeter chainstays, which is 5 millimeters longer than our dirt jumper, our 26-inch dirt jumper.
Right, and those chainstays were shorter than the 26-inch. So my giant STP that I designed, those chainstays on a 29-inch bike were shorter than the bike that I had ridden my whole career for trials. And then we had a 29-inch bike that had shorter chainstays than a 26-inch bike. So it was pretty awesome.
Yeah. Right. They were a little too short though. Longer, more ideal.
Yeah. I don't know if you could ever go too short, but they just didn't need to be that short. So we just like lengthened them up a little bit. All right. Yeah. So Mountainless MTB wants to know, would it be cool with an adjustable rear end? My whole logic on the Ridiculous, on just making it a set rear end, and I don't know if Adam feels differently, but I don't think I've ever in my life wanted longer chainstays, other than like the Ridiculous was a little bit too short, but I've never like gotten a bike, ridden it, thought it was sweet, and then say, oh, I wish the chainstays were a little bit longer. So I just wanted the Ridiculous to be nice and clean and short, and not have, adjusting knobs whenever. If I never was going to use them, I just wanted it to be a simpler looking bike. So we just put on the derailleur dropout, and I think it came out awesome. So we got a couple Instagram questions we're going to just address really quick, and then we'll wrap it up because we're at an hour and 15 minutes. And if we want people to watch every week, we can't beat this thing to death. So we did have some good questions on Instagram. So let me get to those. So the first question was, Adam, this is super easy. Does Reeb do tie hardtails? Yes. If you go to our website, we have a bunch of tie, any product that we make other than the sqweeb, any of the hardtail frames, whether it's a Sam's Pants, Lick Skillet, Ridiculous, you can get them all in titanium.
Yep. And I mean, we can do custom, like we don't necessarily say we do a custom hoopty. If you want to pay for it, we'll do a custom tie hoopty, but it is not something that we would like to offer. A hoopty.
Right. So this is a good one. Does a stronger frame mean a stiffer frame?
No, not at all. So you could build a bike out of plumbing pipe, and you could shoot it with a gun, and right, it would be fine, but it's going to be extremely flexy,
right?
Because it is not a hardened tubing. So, the diameter, the wall thickness, and how it's heat treated is going to dictate on how stiff it is.
Perfect. This is from my buddy that we built at Dirt Jumps, although we did get shut down a little bit with this whole coronavirus. Can you build him a DH frame? So the sqweeb is tested to run a 180 fork.
Yep.
So you could conceivably put together a pretty dope park bike with a dual crown 180 fork and a 153 configuration in the back, and it would be super nimble, jibby, and it would be the ultimate park bike, in my opinion. That's actually what I was planning to put together later this year. If and when Josh is on the trail crew at Mountain Creek, if and when they ever open, that's exactly what I was looking to do, is to do a dual crown DVO fork with a shorter rear end, because downhill bikes are fun, but I like finishing a downhill run with that by the seat of your pants feeling. You know? And when you do that on a 150 bike, like you ride a downhill bike, if you finish a downhill lap and you go, oh my God, Adam, I felt like I was going to die on that lap. Like to get that feeling on a downhill bike, you legitimately almost had to die.
Yeah. I've
at a 150.
I've never ridden anything in the United States. I haven't ridden any like real amazing downhill tracks in the US, but I've never ridden anything that you couldn't ride on a trail bike. And we have customers run a dual crown on their sqweeb. So it's however you want to set up. And honestly, the sqweeb rides, I mean, it can do downhill trails and feel like a downhill bike. I mean, I have ridden it through way more than I ever should, and I love it. Like I had a downhill bike for less than a month and thought it was the stupidest thing I ever bought. Like I have no reason to ever own a downhill bike in my life, because our bike just rides just as good, and you can actually pedal it back uphill.
So two things. I was the first thing is I've been riding the sqweeb in the 130 configuration since I got it back in.
Rode our demo bike today in the 130 configuration. It was a lot of fun.
Right. I haven't remotely like dialed it back. Like I ride it exactly like I rode my old sqweeb at 145 with a 160 fork. I just feel like I got a little bit more pop when I sprint and climb and whatever, but it's not even like I don't ride it any different downhill. I just ride it still just as hard. And also yesterday I was riding at my friend Lars Trabue's house, and he has all these awesome jumps on his property, and we were just laughing that like it's crazy that you're doing that on your trail bike. Like 5 years ago, you would have needed your trail bike and your dirt jump bike and your jump bike, and now it's just like the same. We were hitting huge jumps in his backyard park on the same bike that I'd go for a trail ride on today. And it's just all the same bike. So question from Instagram, why don't more companies make tie bikes?
It's a broad question. Like tie hardtails.
Yeah, I think that's probably just tie hardtails.
Well, it's a pretty open-ended question, but tie is harder. It takes higher skilled welders to do it. It is harder to source the tubing, and it costs over almost 5 times as much for materials. So probably a bigger investment. You got to be doing a decent amount of volume to start dipping your toes in the tie market. And then the additional cost. This is a good one. This was from Matt from Show Up and Ride. He sent me this on Instagram. So he says, when the metal is completely stripped, does it rust quickly at all? So with aluminum, no, but with steel, absolutely. Yep.
If you clean a steel tube with acetone and truly strip off all the oils, like, there's degreasing stuff and there's like really degreasing stuff. And if you like truly degrease something to the point where you need it to be clean enough to weld, it's going to oxidize and rust fairly fast if you don't put some type of oil back on there or paint or something.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, and we treat all the insides of our frames with Frame Saver, which is a rust inhibiting compound so we spray all the insides of the tubes to prevent the insides from rusting also. Sweet.
We're at 1 hour and 22 minutes. We were going to try to keep this one to an hour, and we want people to come back next week. Normally on a Thursday night in Colorado, Adam's out doing a Reeb romp ride. Can't really get out there now, so this is his opportunity to get out and hang out with everybody. So
yeah, new group rides.
This is the virtual group rides. Next week we'll do this on Zwift. All right, so everybody hook up your smart trainer. Put your mountain bike on there. We're going to do this virtual live chat. We got some people coming in saying that they'll be back.
Awesome.
This video will be live, so people can also go back and check this. If you have any questions that we didn't answer in the chat, if you're still watching, post them in a comment, and I'll get to it or Adam will get to it. We'll answer those, and we'll be back. Are we going to be back next week?
Yeah. I'm in.
I was talking to somebody today, Adam, about a very, very, very special guest. Well, I was talking to somebody yesterday about a special guest. That was just Tim. No offense, Tim. But sounds like we will
Tim today on the ride. Well, I saw his car.
So Tim handles Cycle Hops. He handles a bike shop at Cycle Hops. And then he also, if you call Reeb to order a bike, you're probably going to talk to Tim. I was talking to him today about getting him online, but then I was also talking to somebody else, which I'm sure you can catch my drift, who it was, about a very, very, very special guest coming up on one of these episodes.
It's a good hit.
Figure out a little bit of the history about Reeb and how Reeb came about. And, it's cool because talking to him is like talking to one of the guys. So that might be next week, but if it's not next week, it might be the week after. But this is just a tease to get people to keep watching.
Yeah, and we'll try to do a different topic each week.
Right. I don't want to say who it is that we were talking about getting on, but, it's a pretty special guest.
Yeah. We'll probably have each video have a bunch of banter, but also a lot of good questions answered, and yeah, different topics, and yeah, keep it interesting each week.
Super subtle. Nice. All right. Well, cool. Thanks for hanging out with us again tonight, everybody. This video is going to be living online, so you can check it out. We'll be back next week. We'll start posting early next week, coming up with topics that we'll talk about. And Adam and I will be back, and we'll try to get some more people. Maybe if Steve Kaminsky is lucky, we'll send him a link. He could join in for maybe 5 minutes. We'll set a timer or something. Talk about toboggans, something like that. And we'll have some fun. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds great.
Cool. All right, man.
See ya.
Checking it out, everybody.